it's 9, isn't it? 8:59. We've got a couple of minutes. Bruce is running late. He's had a and he's Jen's not well, so he's had to maybe some stock because there's no electricity and not simply fun for much expensive, I'd imagine.
He's walking in the door. He's parked over in the bush.
Right, well, we will kick off because it is 9 o'clock. So we live fix tomorrow. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our meeting, mainly to adopt our long-term plan and strike rates and 2 other items as well. Some other staff, we haven't been members of the public yet. And any apologies? Any apologies? Or just the apology for Bruce for lateness? Just a second. So can I please have move in a second just to thank you for Bruce's lateness. Thanks, James and Caleb. James Sainsbury, second Caleb. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Gary. We will now move on to minutes. Previous actual project that I've listed. Go through the yes. Yes. So have we got any declarations of interest for any of the items today? No declarations of interest? We will now move to the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. No public forum. Are there any over for the confirmation of our minutes? Yes, Caleb, second Jane. All those in favour, there's no hands rising. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thanks. Right. Well, with that, we will now move on to item point 1, which is our risk and assurance committee from yesterday's meeting. We have JD online.
Coordination.
Okay,
can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can, and also good morning to our Audit New Zealand. They're joining us online this morning too. Good morning. Okay, JD, fire ahead. Thank you.
Good. I'm here to provide an update on yesterday's Risk and Assurance Committee meeting. So due to the date change, we were fortunate to just have a quorum, but had great engagement from the committee members present in person and online. The committee received reports predominantly related to the LTP, and we were thankful to the MPDC team for their work on the consultation documents, the LTP, and also the debrief report. And finally, for addressing the consultation document audit recommendations, which really put MPDC in a strong position for the LTP completion, and that also included improved quality assurance. Audit New Zealand were in attendance, so thanks to Renee and her team, and we received the audit plan for the annual report 23-24. We also received positive or future focused reports on the IANS assessment, project management, Lagoima, staff climate survey, safety and wellness, and risk management. And finally, we also considered 2 items in public excluded, which I understand Adrian will discuss later in Q&A. Again, I want to reiterate my thanks to the MPDC team and to the committee members in Audit New Zealand, and happy to answer any queries. Kia ora.
Thanks, JD. Any questions, comments? Yeah, I think it was just to reiterate JD's comments. It was a good meeting, robust, and it has put us in a good position. Yeah, it was lucky we did manage quorum, and yeah, no, that's great. I don't think there's anything else to add. Is there, JD?
No, I just really want to thank the committee members that were present in person online for really strong engagement. We did have some robust cordial, especially in relation to the public excluded items, which Adrian will talk to later, my understanding is.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I guess it's just a big piece of work that we're now reaching the end point to. So that's great. So if someone would like to move the receipt, receiving the information. Thanks, Gary. Moved Gary, seconded Kevin. All those in favour, please be aye. Say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, we'll now move on to item 7.2, the adoption of the development contributions policy. 2. Who will be talking to that one? Okay, so yes, that's right. Did skip the line actually that there was no notification of any urgent business. Just to clarify that, I think there is. Didn't clarify that one. There was the yeah. Okay. Can we move to item 7.3?
Yeah, we're just thinking if we move on to the rates remissions.
Yeah, that was 7.3. Yeah, perfect. Thinking alike.
Right. So, yeah, there was no real changes from when you've seen the policy last time. So, just any questions, I guess.
So, item 7.3 is the adoption of rates remission proposal policy. So, are there any questions or clarification? No. So, can I have a mover, please? The information we received, the council adopts the rate remission and postponement policy 2024-34, and that the policy is to apply from July 2024.
I'm happy with that.
Thanks, moved Jane Sainsbury, seconded Dave Warren. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? No. Right, we'll now jump back to item 7.2, the adoption of the development contributions. So,
yeah, good morning, Mayor and councillors. The development contribution, the final document is in front of you. There have been no changes to any of the projects that they aligned with our long-term plan. A lot of them are percentages growth funded and percentages level of service. So, and there are some rates being used to pay for parts of the projects. So they have been correlated with the latest long-term plan. The only change that has been done of recent is an update to the interest rates. And when we brought the policy to you earlier, it did have, it was about 2.5 or 2%, but we have brought that in line with our assumptions for the general long-term plan, so that has gone up to 5. And so you will in front of you see in the report, I've noted the updated development contributions. There are some increases as a result of that. It's not significant, but there are some increases, and we've also put in the 2021 fees, what we had previously, and the ones we're asking you to adopt.
so
And yeah, I'd also like to add on, if we could put on the recommendation that the charges apply on tomorrow on the 4th of July,
Yes.
just like the report.
yeah, that's Steve has highlighted that to me. That's great. Okay. Any questions, clarification? Yeah, I think it's pretty standard. We did receive some submissions on it. It was supportive of the concept of growth paying for growth. Again, our district is slowly growing. It's not growing as fast as some, but it is definitely in some growth. So it is appropriate to continue with the development contributions policy. I think that's the message that we received. So if there's no questions for clarification, would someone like to make a recommendation, please? Caleb, move Caleb, second Gary. The council receives a report and the council adopts the development contributions policy 2024-34, and also that it's applies from the 4th of July. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Carried. Okay, we'll move to item 7.4 is the adoption of the amended fees and charges. And you'll recall that we did pass our fees and the bulk of our fees and charges at our May 9th meeting. So that's where the dog fees and those things that are already applied. There was that question of clarification around that. So this is covering off the other fees and charges.
Good morning, everyone. So just presenting you today some amended fees and charges. As Adrian noted, most of the fees have been previously approved by council. But just as part of our QA, we did identify a couple of errors that we would like to correct. So one of them is in regards to our parks and open spaces, the gate unlocking fee, which we're proposing to remove. We generally unlock and lock the gates at any time of the day as part of our security contract, so we don't actually need that fee. And yeah, that's right. So we're just taking out the if required component. With our community venues, so this relates to the Morrinsville Event Centre. What we're trying to do is just align that with the fees that we charge for the Silverfern Event Centre. With our pool facilities, our swim zone facilities, we're just proposing some changes around the concessions, the memberships, and the number 2 bathhouse fees that we charge, so that people get the correct discounts for the use of those facilities. And as Susan noted in her previous item, we've just added in the development contributions fee so that all our fees and charges are all together in one place. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions for clarification? So I guess that's what we had before, didn't quite align with policy. It's only a small change, isn't it, for the so I guess it aligns more correctly with the policy.
Yes.
Gosh. If there's nothing to discuss, righty-ho, so we'll go back to the recommendation. Right. Okay. So the recommendations are that we receive the information and the council approves the amended parks and open spaces, community venues and swimming pool fees and development contribution fees to come into effect on the 4th of July. Would someone like to move that? Thank you, Russell. And seconder, Sarah Jane. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And we'll move on to item 7.5. And we've got Niall leading that with the adoption of a long-term plan and also with Renee and Claudia online from Audit New Zealand. So if you'd like to lead us up with Niall.
Thank you. So we're really, Lania and I are really pleased to be here today to present the final long-term plan for your final adoption. This has been a long process and reflects a lot of hard work by the council and elected members. Council will be aware that we've worked through quite a lot of the matters and issues to do with the long-term plan since around February last year. You in March this year, you approved a consultation document that was audited by Audit New Zealand, and that contained an emphasis of matter in relation to the unbalanced budget and also 3 water reform. As council be aware, we went out for consultation starting on the 21st of March through the 21st of April, and we received 465 submissions on the LTP and our other topics as well. And that was across those 9 topics that you see in your consultation document. In May, council heard directly from a range of submitters at your hearing, and then you finalised your decisions towards the end of May. We have brought all of those decisions into the final LTP for you and spent a bit of time doing some quality assurance and making sure that all of the legal requirements have been met. So in your LTP, you'll see that it includes our infrastructure strategy, our financial strategy, our revenue and financing policy, along with a whole bunch of other information. Really, one of the things that you'll need to do as part of this adoption of your LTP is to confirm the unbalanced budget. And I'll ask Lania just to speak to that and also receive the audit opinion. So Renee will be able to present that audit opinion to council. So yeah, I'll perhaps just leave it there and happy to take your questions.
Because we'll just do this recommendation of time, part 1, part 2, so I'll break it down that way. Thank you.
Good. This was something I'd like to point out on the revenue and financing policy since the time that that you adopted the draft policy for the consultation. We've had an external legal review done on the policy just to make sure it all lines up with legislation. We need to get these things right, and the things you can definitely be challenged on. So we've had that external review done. There's been some minor wording changes just to make things line up with the legislation better. But there was one, when we went through the funding considerations for each activity, there was one they suggested that we reviewed in the communication and events activity. We have things like the Business Night Out Awards that we charge a fee for people coming to those, but we in the draft policy, we said it was 100% funded from rates. So we've made a clarification to that just to make it 95 to 100% general rate funding and allowing a small percentage fees and charges. So that was the only change as a result of that. Other things I wanted to point out, obviously we've adopted the limits that you set on the limits on rates for water activities and then all other activities. And just if you look in your agenda on page 60, there's a graph that sort of sets out what that looks like over the 10 years that we've forecast. And in the first year for water rates, for example, we've got a limit of 25%, and we're right on that limit. But in the outer years, we get a bit more headroom than our limits. And I just wanted to highlight that because when we're talking about the balanced budget requirements and the fact that we're going to adopt an unbalanced budget, in the report there I've talked about, we've been very clear that we've got risks in this approach and that we plan to monitor our situation carefully each year. And I've also noted that the LGFA has made contact with us. Part of the LGFA is our main lender. Part of their role is to manage, to monitor the financial situation of all councils on behalf of all the other shareholders. So they have made contact and they've seen our unbalanced budget position. And they're just highlighting the fact that they're concerned with that. They usually look to see that your unbalanced budget situation is improving over the LTP period. Ours doesn't because of the fact that we, particularly with the desludging expenditure, we're looking to fund that over a 15-year period. So we're sort of outside of the 10-year period where they'd expect to see some improvement. So they're highlighting that as a area of concern. We've talked about why we're doing that, why we believe it's prudent. So we feel like we're managing that risk. We're not going out with like the concern is that we're borrowing to pay the groceries, but that's a defined project that council have looked at, and we've talked about the reasons why we're doing it. So, but it's their job to look at keep a watch on us. So they're doing their job.
So I guess clarification there, the reasons that it's an operational expense, not a capital expense, that was changed a number of years ago. And so it changes to the groceries rather than capital cost. And of course it's something that happens once every 50 years or something. Yeah, like it's not a regular occurrence. So it's fascinating that it is an operational cost when it's quite significant. That's how we've really justified it, to spread it over a period of time, just for that clarity.
So that's all from me. So any questions?
I think you got a comment, Renee or Claudia, in relation to that, and I think we've covered it off fairly thoroughly.
Yes, thank you very much. I can maybe just very quickly add, good morning everybody. We issued an unmodified audit opinion. It states that the LTP provides a reasonable basis for long-term integrated decision-making and coordination of the council's resources and accountability of council to the community. So we were happy with that, with the process and the document. As mentioned, we have 2 emphasis of matter paragraphs in the report. It's just focusing the reader's attention on the capital delivery assumption and the unbalanced budget that you've been discussing now. Just quickly from my side, a heartfelt thank you to the hard work from the MPDC team. It was a really big project, tremendous amount of hours and significant commitment going into the document. And just we're going to focus, we're pivoting our focus now to the annual report. So we're going to be in your line of vision for the next couple of months as we complete the annual audit. That's everything from me. So if there's any questions, happy to address that.
Cool. Yeah, we're just breaking down our recommendations one step at a time. So our first recommendation is around the unbalanced budget. So is there any questions for clarification from you? Right, so our first resolution, part 1, is the resolution of unbalanced budget. Do you want to bring it up on, rather than read the whole thing, bring it up online so that you can all see it? Because it's obviously there's quite a few significant points there. We have discussed it around the borrowing and the rate increases, the desludging, depreciation. So it being up online, does someone have to move that recommendation? Moved Kevin, seconded James, Thomas. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, so that's part 1. Okay, part 2, we have the approval of the CapEx projects, and you will have received the table of all the projects, but there was the brief one showing the different types of capital projects, around levels of service renewals, and what was the other one? Sorry? Growth, that's right, goodness, yeah, it's all there, up there, stored in my brain. So what would you like to add to that? Lania, talk to that one. It's pretty self-explanatory. We've got quite a big, perhaps optimistic CapEx budget, but of course the needs, the must-dos are compliance-based, so that is our justification for putting it in there. Of course, it can all change in years' time with what happens with local audit done well, but we have to, we've addressed it in this long-term plan. So any questions or clarification? I think Renee's all good. She's commented on that. We've it is an optimistic one, and the challenge is around achieving that. But I think the agreement is we have to put it in rather than not put it in. So, and we will do our best to achieve what we must. So, can I have a move in? Thank you, Gary, and seconded Sue. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. That was part 2. We'll now move on to part 3, which is the receipt of the audit opinion and letter of representation. We will have read that document. So we've received the opinion and from Audit New Zealand on behalf of the Auditor General. I think Renee's already spoken to that. And so we'll approve the letter of representation to be provided to Audit New Zealand on behalf of the Auditor General and on the audit of the long-term plan as circulated. Can I have a move, please? Moved Sue and seconded Russell. All those in favour, yes, they are.
Aye.
Just following this meeting, Madam Chair, we just need you to sign that.
So, yes, correct. I would expect that to appear my way in the coming hours. Okay, that's carried. Okay, now part 4, the adoption of our long-term plan. So any further discussion to that? Is there anything to add? I think it's been a big piece of work and a big challenge, and you want to talk to that now?
Not particularly, other than just to make a note. I think we're pleased that we've landed it where we are. There was one minor change that was made to the long-term plan since the version that was sent out on Friday to one of the figures, and we circulated an updated copy on that. But yeah, no, nothing in particular other than just to acknowledge the work and effort from our audit team and also the MPDC team internally.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a massive piece of work. It's been the most challenging one because of the economic climate, the change in government and the uncertainty around policies swinging. We've made our best fist of it. What we didn't know then we know now, sort of, and there's sort of stuff that's going to evolve over time. cannot underestimate the amount of effort that has gone into this project. For those councils that have gone to an enhanced annual plan to address their long-term plan later in the year, I don't envy them. I think our staff wouldn't envy them either, because now we've kept to our lane, kept to the process, and we can get on with the work that needs to continue. Whereas I think doing LTP and then moving into an election year as well would be challenging. Just one point of clarification.
I think it's really good that we kept the three waters in initially.
It was a smart move.
And made that decision, because otherwise we would be in the same boat as everyone else. So,
well, it's made it easier. Yeah. The only point of clarification in our grants, just as a small one, was we had put in our funding to Hamilton Waikato Tourism. We'd made the comment around our decisions, really also considering what other councils are doing. So just to highlight to you that Waipa and their enhanced annual plan have reduced their funding by 20%. Our proposal is about 16.67% to drop down to 125. Waikato's District Council's enhanced plan is they're dropping down to 19.33%, and Aotearoa and Waitomo we're looking to reduce significantly. So I think with that we're in line with what our other councils are doing. So I think you will be happy with that. Obviously we're not changing it today, but I just think that point of clarification to be made now in the as our decision making. So that's all I had to raise from that. Yeah, so here we are. So part 4, adoption of long-term plan, that council receives the report that we adopt the long-term plan in accordance with section 93 of the Local Government Act, which includes the financial strategy and infrastructure strategy, revenue and financing policy, and number 9, council authorises staff to make any further minor amendments as needed for accuracy, clarity or consistency prior to publication, and that the long-term plan 2024-34 applies from the 4th of July 2024. At the end of the day, of course, it is just a forecast, and what will happen in the future will happen in the future. So could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Jane Sainsbury, seconded Jane Horn. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Massive piece of work. I think we've had a lot of courage. You know, it's not fun going out with another rate rise on the back of last year. We all know that these times that people are hurting, some more than others. You know, what more can we say? We're trying to be grounded in reality. We've managed the rate rise as best we can. We've addressed our fees and charges to help align those fees and charges with our rating policy, funding policy around what's rate subsidised and what's user pays. So well done, everybody, for your participation and engagement in this.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor, and I also acknowledge Audit,
Yes.
the approach and demeanour that they brought to the process. That's, as I said yesterday, it's always helpful to have a relationship that is positive and constructive, and certainly we appreciate the attitude that Audit brought to the table. And the two most commonly used adjectives that auditors always provide, which we welcome, with rate fee, is reasonable and adequate. We can't get better than that.
No, it's fascinating the journey that we go on, because we talked yesterday briefly at Risk Insurance around having our draft plan audited. Some councils choose to just go ahead and not have that draft plan audited, but I think it strengthens the document by having it audited, and the risks, because if you've not got it right, and it fine tunes, because there are always things to just tweak to make it more robust. So thank you, and thank you to the people that took the time to submit for our long-term plan. We've done a lot of promotional work beforehand explaining, and of course the thing is that New Zealanders council are faced with rate rises right across the country, and this is not unique to our council, and I think that's been an important message to understand, and the cost of infrastructure has just gone up so much. So thanks everyone for that, and we will now move on to item 7.6, which is striking the rates for the 24-25. Thank you, Renee. Thanks, buddy. We'll see you again soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Right, setting the rates for 24-25. So this obviously just leads from your LTP you've just adopted. So the rates resolution sets out our rates for the year and the dates that the instalments apply and the penalties apply. We have had this resolution checked for legal compliance. The rates obviously make up 70% of our revenue, so we want to get this right. So we've had the legal review and they were happy with everything. So yeah, any questions?
Peter.
I just wanted to ask this question since I've been a ratepayer, so but for a personal request here, you know the 10% penalty that applies, never having had to pay it, thank goodness, but where does the 10% come from? Is it just an arbitrary figure that council chooses? Is it a nationwide figure or
Set by law,
No, I think we can. No, we can set that penalty. I think there is a limit on it. I have to.
I mean, it's always been 10%. I think it just seems to sit there, but
Yeah.
better than 8.2 anyway.
so council chooses that penalty amount.
It's a tax and at the end of the day, and so there is a penalty. But I think is there an opportunity here to talk to how that penalty is applied? Because if people miss one payment, they can apply to not pay the penalty.
That's
They
correct.
can apply for a penalty waiver if they haven't had one in the
Yeah.
3-year period. You can apply for a penalty.
Yeah, the Jaegers got around one doing that because they're a little bit late once.
Yeah, and that's but I think
All
that's,
those years.
but that's the important message is that for people that miss one is, you know,
Second one.
set up a directly, but I don't know. Yeah, but the important thing is here is that our council doesn't whack on the 10% penalty and not, you know, without some consideration of those that have paid on time in the past. You have a record of paying on time. Sometimes we do miss one, and that's where our council tends to sit. So we don't go in with a sledgehammer, to put it in a sort of basic analogy. But yeah, but we do hope that people set up payments to avoid being late paying, to avoid the penalty. And people are often embarrassed by it too. So you know, it's those sorts of things that we don't enjoy.
Rates team try really hard to protect towards direct debits. It's just the easiest option, and it's in avoid all penalties. Yeah.
Gary, did you want to say
Money.
Righty, so you can see there, obviously, the general rate, uniform, annual general charge, and obviously the different targeted rates. And I think we need to highlight the cost of wastewater and drinking water continues to rise. And that is what's driving our rate increases. And unfortunately, it hits those with the targeted rate to those that receive that service. So there's no, and then you can go, like obviously with our halls, those of us that live rurally and pay a rate to keep our halls looking good. I think it's the hall committees actually decide, don't they, whether they want to rate or not. They can.
Yeah, we do ask the hall committees to let us know sort of around January if they want to increase the rates for a specific project they've got going on, or yeah, we from a lot of them to be fair, but yeah, they pop up from time to time. So otherwise, we're just trying to keep them up with inflation. So increase the rates.
Yeah, it's projects like re-roofing them that can cost quite a bit. So it's looks up a little bit of reserve there. Alrighty. Any other? Obviously, we've got our dates for our rates and in the penalty. So, if someone would like to move the recommendation,
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
thank you, Caleb. Back to it is that the report be received and that we hereby resolve to set the following rates in this report under the Local Government Rating Act 2002 on rating units in the district for the financial year commencing 1st July 2024 and ending on 30th June 2025, and to state the due dates and authorised penalties on unpaid rates under section 24, 57 and 58 respectively of the Local Government Rating Act and that the rates shown are inclusive of 15% GST, goods and services tax. So move Caleb, seconded. Peter. Thank you, Peter. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Carried. Yes. Thank you, Lania, and well done. I know that the hours you've spent, it's, the candle, the wick's probably been burning at both ends at times, I would imagine.
Get into the annual report.
Yeah, and then move into the annual report, but hopefully that's not as arduous. Okay, we'll now move on to item 7.7, which is the public amenities bylaw review. Thank you, Laura and Niall.
Here, kia ora, councillors. This morning we present the report which details the requirement for council to review its public amenities bylaw. And this bylaw enables councils to control and set standards for its public amenities. And public amenities includes things like cemeteries, libraries, swimming pools, parks and reserves, and the like. And this bylaw is primarily made under the Local Government Act, therefore requires review every 10 years, every 5 years after it's made, and then every subsequent 10 years. And this bylaw is actually due for review on the 9th of July. So therefore requires council to make some determinations this morning under section 155 of the LGA. And this actually satisfies the legislative requirements of the bylaw review and ensures that the bylaw remains in place. As we've been discussing this morning, we have been working on the long-term plan and a number of other policies. So it's now enables us to have a really good look at this bylaw. So the determinations this morning will allow us to commence that review. And also as we've discussed before, we also plan to review our other bylaw alongside this one, which is the public safety bylaw. So there's 3 determinations to review under section 155. And the first one is to determine if the bylaw is the most appropriate way of addressing the perceived problems. And you'll see that your report contains an initial assessment of some of the perceived problems. So at this stage, we do recommend that a bylaw is the most appropriate way of addressing these problems. The bylaw protects and promotes public health and safety, and also helps to ensure that our public amenities are safe and enjoyable for the public and the community to enjoy. And so once this has been determined, then council must determine whether the bylaw is the most appropriate form of bylaw. And this is about the appropriateness of the content and the format of the bylaw. And we've noted that the current bylaw is inconsistent with some of our other bylaws, and that includes things like camping. We've got a freedom camping bylaw now. So therefore, we're kind of determining at this stage that the existing bylaw is not the most appropriate form, and therefore we're going to commence a review and it should be amended. And then the third determination that needs to be made this morning is, does the bylaw give rise to any implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act? And it's considered the current bylaw provisions are reasonable. They place restrictions on behaviour only due to potential danger or risk to health and safety of others. So it's considered that that does not give rise to any implications under the Bill of Rights Act. Of course, we will undertake further analysis of any amended bylaw. But at this stage, we consider that the current bylaw meets that determination. And so we're developing a work plan to review this bylaw. And as I said, we're going to review the public safety one alongside. It deals with quite similar issues. And we plan our timeline is to undertake consultation March, April next year. And yeah, so that's kind of all I'd like to add at this stage. But if there are any questions, very happy to
to answer them. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Any questions for clarification? I think the important thing is that if we don't pass this recommendation today, our policy will lapse. And the rest.
It will in 2 years.
Yeah. But there's that time frame that we have to make a decision before the 9th of July in order to keep the process.
Yeah, effectively it's just a holding.
Which is our decision today. So there are 7 recommendations. Shall we bring that up? Instead of reading it all verbatim.
Just note there, maybe I think it would be 3A and B.
Yes, it's got A and A. Yeah, I didn't notice that. We did read it, but thank you for highlighting that. The little spot there. Right, so we have the recommendation up on the screen. Can I please have a mover? Thank you, James Thomas, and seconded Dane Vaughan. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Things have changed a bit in 10 years too, I would imagine. We'll be interested in what the conversation brings up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on to item 7.9, which is the remuneration for Haraki Rail trustee. Yeah. Smile.
Thank you again. So we have been contacted by the Haraki Rail Trail Charitable Trust, and they are seeking an increase to the remuneration paid to the trustees. You'll see in the report the current remuneration for the chair is $3,000 as an annual honorarium, and they're proposing to increase that to $3,620, along with an increase to the meeting fee and the trustee fee. For the members would also increase a bit. So just by way of a bit of background, the Haraki Rail Trail Charitable Trust is responsible for the governance and management of the cycle trail that runs through MPDC, Haraki and TCDC. Under the trust deed, it is the responsibility of the settler councils who established the trust to set the remuneration for the trustees. This has been ongoing for some time, and the trustees haven't had a remuneration increase in quite a number of years. So they feel that it's quite timely that this is done. What they have done is they have used the essentially inflation, the local government cost index, and they have simply applied that from the existing baseline fees to arrive at the fee they are now proposing. I'm advised that Haraki have approved these fees as part of their LTP, and TCDC are currently considering it, but I'm advised that they're not expecting any issues from TCDC's side. So what I've done in the report is just set out for you what we pay for our other committees and working groups, so you've got some comparison with what we pay for other members. You'll note that we have previously discussed with you a policy around appointing members to boards and around remuneration. That policy council hasn't signed off on that policy, but we have looked at how this aligns with our policy. Probably the gap here is that we don't have an up-to-date market assessment of remuneration. In talking to our colleagues at Haraki, they've said that this was initially done back in 2017. They actually established what they were paying the trustees, but they haven't repeated that work because there's quite a cost in getting that done. So that's the proposal is for council to agree to that remuneration increase along with the other 2 councils.
Yeah, just a clarification. So with the increase for the additional 27,000 of funding, this increase is captured in there, but it's not as well as.
So what, and I must congratulate Noel on his report. He did a far better report than I could have done. What I suggested to Noel is we've approved the budget, which was requested, and that's included in your LTP.
Yes,
So in my mind, you got to live within that budget.
yes. And that's and here we've got the additional cost. An approach council could take is to agree to the additional meeting fees, but make it clear to the trust that the total funding for the trail has not increased.
Correct.
Because it's like a double dip.
They are seeking that in addition to the 27,000. But our approach could be that it needs to fit within that envelope, and that's what we're saying here.
And that's the same approach that we apply to any of our operational budgets. You make choices. I suppose what it does, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to the trust because they do a good job, but it puts control on how many meetings you have, et cetera, and so that to me is not an unreasonable approach. It's an approach we'd put on ourselves.
Yes, because it is an operational cost, so that should have been factored in when they applied for the additional funding. So I see a lot of nods around the table
So you could clarify, if you wanted to formalise that, you could just clarify that as part of your resolution, that is within the existing budget increase.
Yes.
And not in addition.
Yeah. So is there someone who would like to, is there any discussion on that? Or is there someone like to move that motion with that addition that this is within the additional funding that is being approved? So move Bruce.
Yes.
Seconded Caleb. All those in favour, please say aye. Is there more discussion?
Well, I just, you said you said the additional, we're just saying.
It's
That's
within the
within your
additional
funding that we've approved.
Yes. That's quite clear.
So yes, they sought an extra $27,000 to help cover their strategic overheads.
Yeah.
And essentially what we're saying is that it needs to be within that.
Yeah. John, so you're right, you can put that one, Steph, that the funding is within that has been already been approved. Is that
Yes.
states it basically? Yeah. Right.
Within
Yeah,
that,
put the
you could
motion.
say additional funding. Or
Yeah.
whatever.
So with that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you very much.
right. Yes. We're running a little bit ahead of schedule. Carl is here. Yeah. But we're still on their way.
Yeah, they're just coming across the street at the moment.
That's fine. That's fine. I don't think there's anything else we can move forward at this stage. Oh, we can name the roads.
Yeah.
Can we get Barry down? It's only 2 seconds, isn't it?
We just do it.
I know, yeah, but we can't do the other side. It won't take long to get Barry down to yes, item 7.12. Yeah, it's just running quite well. Yes. Yeah, we've locked in item 7.8 for 10 o'clock, so just looking to see what we can bring forward, and that's what I think the road naming for my fields is appropriate. Take too long. You can never accurately estimate how long our agenda items will be. And with a lot of plan, we just had, I think we should just be able to know the key points now without even having to read it. I think we've been so engaged on it for so many months. Always an awkward silence, isn't it? Someone has to try and fill it.
We start singing.
No.
Oh, God, no.
I just saw an email that Piako posted from it.
Yes, there's been a regional.
The new paper.
Yeah.
Which
Here we go. Here's Barry. Good morning, Barry. Thank you for coming down early. So we're just doing item 7.12, which is the road naming of Maya Field Stage 2 in Matamata.
Yep.
Yeah, we're running ahead of schedule, and your one was the easy one to pick off. So good morning and welcome, Barry. And I'd like to talk to this item, please.
Okay, so we've got 3 new public roads, part of the second stage of Maya Fields. Listed are the preferred names: Tamura, Te Whenua and Te Ahulua. There's a plan on page 3 outlining the locations of proposed new roads, and the recommendation being that council approves the 3 new preferred public name roads, and also includes the extension of Pukutiki shown at the bottom of the plan.
It's quite interesting, like the alternative names going to the colours. Like it's quite a different. It's quite nice to recognise the people.
Yeah.
Colours. Know them well. So those of you that are familiar with Te Reo, those other alternatives are some of the colours. So Sue will move, and second Caleb, that the proposed names. So story running around on different pages. Here we go. Okay. Right. But we approve the 3 street name, new preferred public names: Tamure Street, Te Whenua Street, and Te Ahurua Street. As part of stage 2 of the Maya subdivision, and council approves the extension of Tokilomo Parade as part of stage 2 of Maya Field subdivision. So yeah, moved Sue, seconded Gary. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, we will now jump back to, thanks Barry for coming down early. We'll now jump back to item 7.8, which is a really awesome thing, I think, to have happen and for our team and our audit team especially, is the acknowledgement of the award to James as our water treatment plant operator of the year. So Carl, for New Zealand, yes, outstanding achievement. And Carl, if you'd like to.
James, I did post it, my friend set up.
Yeah, I met James a while ago at a new staff thing because he'd been with us for a while, but I did remember him. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Well, James has been with us for a little, but not a long time, and I guess it's really part of the story here. So James is, as you've heard, has been awarded the accolade of New Zealand Wild Operator of the Year. So it's a competitive competition where council need to nominate their water staff, and they compete on their merits and their general standing in the industry, and are awarded that title. So James, some of the achievements that James has delivered while he's been here at DC is James is an actually from a water background, is that right, James? I'm from a water background, so across the 2.5 years we've been here, James has completed all the certificates, all his training with high marks and a lot of recommendation and support from the training organisations which provide that training for us. He's also been leading in a lot of our projects, providing that sort of operator input here. In particular, James took it upon himself to figure out a particular calculation. I don't pretend to understand how it works, but a calculation to help the guys better control the process of our clients. And of course, you longer serving councillors will remember that often we do struggle with that. So James has actively participated in delivering outcomes which minimise our risk there. So that's all I really have to say about it. I might actually throw to Chris, because Chris actually organised the nomination. So if you have something you want to add.
No. So for those of you that know what WIOG is, it's the Water Industry Operations Group. So multiple, as Carl said, multiple teams enter throughout the country, as well as a nomination that comes from Australia, and we send a team over there to compete. So as part of that nomination or running, James gets a paid trip to Australia's conference and about 4 days going around some of their treatment plants to see how Australia does it differently to us. But yeah, no, James has been a shining star in our team since he's started. He predates me by a few months.
Yeah,
Well done.
no, that's absolutely awesome. Do you have anything to add?
No, I'm just very proud of the fact that the team has got people like James who can lead by example, show enthusiasm and dedication. I think too often people obviously think sometimes the way we treat our water and wastewater plants is that we're going to hell on a handcart. I think this is a demonstration of the fact that the guys that actually are coalface are committed, providing a high level of service and professionalism to their role. And all I can say is well done, James, and keep it up. And it's a real pleasure having you on the staff.
Yeah. And okay, just add to that, like obviously that was a real highlight when we, of course, first read of being in the top 4 for the Tills water supply. So again, congratulations to the team for that achievement as well. I think that, and then for you, James, to win operator is just awesome. And I don't think the average person realises when they turn the tap on what has actually happened to that water for them to be able to drink it. It is a science. It is acutely accurate. It is full of compliance. It's not like just keeping your pool water clean, because that's what the average person might think about a swimming pool, and most of us know that. This is another level again, and it is a science. And I just congratulate the team, your leadership, and long may that last. Our drinking water is we're not identified in the band group. So which is important that we've made the investment in the right places to ensure our drinking water is compliant. But we need you to ensure that it performs to that standard. So thanks, team. Congratulations, James. This is obviously your moment. What would you like to say? Make a comment about your journey in the water space. Because you're civil engineering. An engineering background, kind of?
Yeah, fashion. I sort of started civils and something underground. That's like a lifetime ago now. An interesting couple of years. I wouldn't have got this to this point without the team. Carry on.
Right. No, thank you, and well deserved. And again, congratulations. And with that, someone like to move the information be received. Thanks, Russell. Seconded Sue. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And we will now break for morning tea. Yeah.
Yes.
I know. Probably don't have very much slants.
streaming. So welcome back, everybody. And we will now move into item 7.10. It's the submissions on the fast track approvals bill and standing bar heritage listing. We've got Carolyn and Nathan here to speak to that. So good morning.
Morning. So we council's policy team recently made 2 submissions, and we're just looking for retrospective endorsement of those submissions. The first submission was on the fast track approvals bill, which is being introduced as part of phase 2 of the government's RMA reform. So the fast track approvals bill is similar to the sort of fast track process under the COVID-19 legislation, but has sort of taken that a little bit further. They are looking to establish a separate consenting regime for regionally and nationally and regionally significant infrastructure and development projects. And I guess an example of that is our Tauhei solar farm that we've got in Te Aroha West at the moment. So that went through the old fast track consenting process. So the new bill is looking to, instead of just being relevant to the RMA, it's looking to cross a whole lot of pieces of legislation to the Conservation Act, the Wildlife Act, Fisheries Act, and it's essentially going to be a one-stop shop for large projects. So our submission provisionally endorsed the sort of concept of a one-stop shop, noting that there can be tensions between different legislation, and you get consent under one and it has conditions, and you get a consent on another which also has conditions and they conflict and that sort of thing. So I think there is merit, but we just wondered whether or not it had struck the right balance between enabling development and protecting the environment. So there's a couple of points that we raised. We noted that there's several opportunities for council to be involved, but the timeframes are quite tight for our involvement. So we've just made a point of that. There's also no ability for us to cover our costs. So our involvement is free or at the cost of the ratepayers. The other thing was the fast track approvals bill allows for the consideration of prohibited activities, which we didn't think was appropriate because, especially from an RMA perspective, communities and councils have gone through a consultation process to identify prohibited activities and at considerable cost, and we just didn't think it was appropriate to then reopen those up for consideration again.
Just to clarify the cost side of it, because we made a submission to obviously highlight that, and I think all councils will have probably followed the same thought, because the ratepayer is effectively picking up the tab for the work that planning staff do, and that's the way it looks. So when will we find out? Like, what's the timing of when this goes through? Because obviously this was in submission period closed in April.
Yes.
When are we getting an outcome on it?
I'm not sure.
No.
Yes, I can't.
Yeah, because I'd be interested to see whether they bring any consideration to that, because it can be at quite a significant cost, can't it, for what the planners have to do.
Yeah, so I think they've been going through the hearing process now, or may have just recently completed it. So
yeah, we'll find out in due course. I guess we haven't got a lot of fast track things happening in our district. I think there's a quarry, there's a couple of things, isn't there?
There was 3 that we were aware of that had applied to be on in Schedule 2 of that bill, and that was Swaps Quarry on Barton Road, a plan change on Banks Road in Matamata, and the Cambridge to Wairere
Expressway extension. Yeah. So that's all that we're aware of at this point in time.
And I guess the other thing we highlighted is it has a very prescriptive consultation process. So it directs the panel to invite comments from certain people, and we just think that maybe was reflective of the scale of some of these activities and the effects of some of these activities. So, yeah, those were the
Yeah, strike the balance between everybody having a say.
Yeah.
And those that are generally effective.
Yes. Yeah.
That's probably because that's the whole purpose of the OMA, was the ability for people to submit and gave everybody.
Yeah, public participation.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, yeah, that was the, I guess, a summary of our submissions on the fast track approvals bill. So I'll just hand it over to Carolyn to talk about Senegal.
So Senegal is a Heritage New Zealand proposal at a property at 901 Tower Road, and the owners themselves nominated the site to be included in the Heritage New Zealand list. And the heritage site itself consists of a timber wool shed, a cow shed, and a corrugated iron whare that was workers' accommodation in the surrounding area, and it also includes quite a few chattels that are in these buildings. And the building materials themselves, including the corrugated iron roofing, have been noted in the draft listing report as significant. So the submission assumed that if it was included onto the list, that we would also be putting it into our heritage schedule.
Can I just ask why it's significant? I just tried to find everything I could on it. Why is it significant?
The building.
Yeah. Was it the first or the? Oh, was it the first site or something?
So significant in that probably not a lot of rural heritage is being captured.
Right.
So it's an example in this district.
Okay.
The submission assumed if it went on the list that it would become part of the district plan heritage schedule and subject to rules, which would limit activities occurring in the surrounds. So the submission did express concern that the proposed extent did contain some operational aspects of the farm, which include water pumps and a race, and suggested that these are excluded from the proposed site. And we also asked for the site to be defined by GPS coordinates. We felt it was poorly described in the listing report. And that the final listing report also refers to expected best conservation practices given the current state of the buildings, and that the listing report had said that they were significant.
Carolyn, that was the state of the buildings, and I'm just looking at it right now. I mean, and it's no criticism of them or of the process, but I mean, those buildings were never built to last. They're not like a 15th century castle or something like that. But so, and you look at that, and it is dilapidated, if I'm allowed to use that word, because it is. So now. Is the expectation now of these owners to actually not store them per se, but do you know what I mean? I mean, it's cool that this lady wants to preserve the heritage, and I get all that, but it's just that I suppose I've got my little practical farmer's hat on, going, how do they preserve that, because it's going to fall over in the next kind of Conway Buster, or do they? Just the obligations, and you were saying also about the. That heritage had gone a bit too far in ways, saying, hey, you can't do this with mentioning water pumps and races and all kind of that. So that was just my little kind of confusion around, I suppose. And if they sell the farm, the person that comes on has to have an obligation to protect those buildings as well. Yeah, that's at a cost. At a cost. So that's my confusion. It's like you look at that, you go, well, that's going to, do we actually have to do some work on that, or how do we actually keep it like it was? And it's quite awkward when a building was probably never designed to last more than 50 years.
So the irony of the listing is there is an obligation to preserve per se. It's if you undertake an activity that you're not damaging or affecting the building. So if you run stock through there, or that activity won't damage the building.
But it will fall down by its own accord if it's not something that isn't done.
Quite possibly it might.
Yeah, so there's no expectation to preserve it in that sense. It's just to fence it off and
let it decay
and designate it as a heritage site. And our role as a council is not,
So our role as the council, if they came with a proposed activity that they wanted to repair and restore it, which in this case, given materials are significant, it potentially would require a consent, that we would assess that resource consent for them.
that would be the only role that we would play.
Yeah.
James?
No, nothing, just I'm happy to jump straight to the recommendation. As stated, and really just acknowledge the work, and particularly working with the landowners for Senegal, because I know there was a bit of to and fro iteration. So so thank you. And I think they're both well reasoned, well thought through submissions. So I'm happy to pass a recommendation as it's stated.
Yeah, thanks, James. Just before I move on to asking for seconder, I know at one of our mayoral forums in Wellington, there was a panel discussion around the fast track policy proposal, which was quite interesting from a for and against perspective. And for some, it was $1 each way, because I guess for some large businesses, they'd be happy for it. But so long as it didn't mean that they were then affected by another fast track, because I guess this is the thing, isn't it? Is how people deem to be affected by them when they're fast tracked. So it's quite a fascinating perception, because it is a perception of what this will look like going forward. So if there's no other points, Gary, yeah?
I was just going to make a comment on the fast track solution. What I thought we could have done was maybe just make some reference to some of the mighty aspirations that we've talked about in council, and what that might, how that might impact mighty aspirations. Yeah, fast track also opportunity missed, but
yes,
yeah, I guess it's interesting. But if you look at it holistically from the whole view, I get what you're saying, Gary, but it's I guess at this point in time that this is where it's sitting, isn't it? And there may have been other submissions that may have raised that. It'll be interesting to see what the comments are.
27,000 submissions. So
yeah. All righty. Do I have a seconder? Or Kevin, have you got a question?
Oh no, I agree with James. I'm not sure why this is even in here. I mean,
We're required to, as a council, to for Senegal. Yeah, we're required to as a council because it's in our district. It will be designated in our plan.
So when you say we would be responsible for giving a resource consent, is that like the table one, or for us to just do because it's one of these properties?
So they would be required, if it triggered the rules under the district plan, they would be required to lodge a resource consent as the only compensation for people.
Yeah.
They may be able to apply through the heritage house.
Yeah.
So you can just jump in. Sorry. At the moment, this was an application from the landowners that they wanted to get it protected under the New Zealand Heritage Society. So we're actually making a submission to them. But if it reaches the significance, and they said it is significant, and also noting in our district, we don't have, I don't know of any heritage items that actually represents the agricultural, heritage of our district, and that is quite, it is quite a founding aspect that our district was based on, and we don't actually have any heritage that represents that currently protected. So this is about a submission to the protection under the New Zealand Heritage, but likely what would follow is us putting a protection on our district plan to recognise that historic places have said this is the site of significance, and rules would come into play around that. So I guess it's not a process that we're currently going under, but because it is in our district, they invite us to make a submission on it, and that's where submission has resulted from.
Yeah. It's built in understanding.
That's what First Estate was doing.
That's a bit different though, isn't it?
This was part of the Matamata estate. That's what it's part of. When they
so it's a separate title.
Late 1800s, early 1900s, they split it up. That's what it is.
Well, it's an application. Now, Gary, you're happy to second that motion, I believe. So it was moved, Jane Sainsbury seconded, Gary. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, we will now move to item 7.11, which is the private plan change 57 for Calcutta and the extension of time. And good morning, Rose. We've got a member of the public here this morning just to obviously hear today's discussion and recommendation.
Cool. So we've got private plan change 57, which was an application by Calcutta to zone approximately 40 hectares of rural land on the eastern outskirts of Matamata into general industrial zone. It introduces a set of bespoke sort of planning provisions that are also aligned with plan change 58, which is Avenue Business Park, which has recently been granted. There was an intention to hear them together because they are, I guess, similar applications. They're also both on highly productive land. There was an intention to hear them together in back-to-back hearings in February, but Calcutta vacated that hearing spot, and so we just heard Avenue Business Park on its own. So because so much time has sort of gone on, we are probably going to struggle to meet our timeframe. So the RMA says that we have to make a decision on a plan change within 2 years of that plan change being notified, and it was notified, I believe, on the 11th of October 2022. And so that is 11th of October 2024 is our deadline to make a decision, and we wouldn't have enough time to organise a hearing and get a decision out to meet that deadline. So we've made some recommendations in terms of options, I guess, and one of those options is to do nothing, but I guess that's probably an option that I wouldn't recommend because there's no way we're going to sort of meet that time frame. So I'll just back it up a little bit. So Calcutta have sort of acknowledged that, and they've asked us to apply to the Ministry for the Environment for an extension of time. So they've asked for a 2-year extension. We don't necessarily have to run with that. We don't have to run with what they've asked for. And in applying for an extension, we also have to consider the interests of any person who, in its opinion, our opinion, may be directly affected by the extension, the interests of the community in achieving an adequate assessment of the effects of the proposed policy statement or plan or change to the policy statement or plan, and its duty under Section 21 to avoid unreasonable delay. So in assessing those sort of criteria, or assessing the first criteria, sorry, we went out to the submitters on the plan change and asked for their feedback. We got 4 responses. 2 were, one was in favour of the 2-year extension, 2 were happy to accept whatever the council went with, and 1 was against it. So WRC were against it. They basically said that they considered that we had enough information to make an assessment on the plan change and that we should not delay it any longer than we needed to. So yeah, that was that. In terms of the second one, the interests of the community in achieving an adequate assessment. So the applicant obviously believes that the community's best interest would be served and grant for applying for a 2-year extension. WRC have a different view, obviously. And the last one is our duty to avoid unreasonable delay. And I don't, the RMA, I guess, routinely allows for timeframes to be doubled. So I don't think Calcutta's 2-year extension would constitute as an unreasonable delay, or anything between would constitute as an unreasonable delay. So yeah, so 3 options. We either don't apply for extension, we apply for a 1-year extension, which is what we've recommended, or we adopt Calcutta's application and apply for a 2-year extension. Or I guess there's option 4 is we apply for something in between.
Yeah. Cool. So James, Kevin. Kevin James. Sorry.
That's right. Normally it was Caleb and Jack.
Yeah, whatever. How are you? Sorry.
I honestly, I'm happy to for the 2 year. Honestly, it gives them a little bit more time to do things, time for things to change with this government, time for processes to happen. So, I don't know, well, hamstring them with 1 year.
I guess the question is to understand the broader view, and for my understanding around the zoning, I'm more interested in understanding the zoning currently and where it's heading, because Matamata and Wahara get lumped together, which sort of seems a bit of a different market, but anyway, and it's to understand how much land is currently zoned that's going to be developed within a short time frame. And if we go 2 years, what's the impact of us if there's a private plan change for that land? If somebody else comes forward with some land to rezone in a smaller block? Because I think that the frustration with this, and I get the frustration for this plan change, is that the national policy statement for high productive land was released right when this policy, when this plan change was applied for.
Notified when it was
notified. That's the word.
Yeah.
So, and of course we've got this 10-year time frame that we're caught in, and of course the extent. I think it was the scale of the PC 57 was the challenge with the high productive soils and the scale of it, and so. Yeah, I'm trying to get my head around the benefits of 1 or 2 years or 18 months, because
or 5 or whatever.
Well, it's you can only go to 2.
I know, but I'm just.
And we're proposing 1, but is there a happy medium in between? Because I guess that, and it's a little bit of a interesting challenge from my perspective, is that we have a government that's looking to change things, because we all know 10 years is very short-term thinking. And given we're in a growth cell in Matamata, it's with our connection to Tauranga, what does it mean if we do allow, go with the applicant's application for 2 years? What are the risks to us? Because does that mean then that we're in that holding pattern for that period when land may get developed and we don't have any land available because we have to wait for the 2 years, or can that 2 years be brought forward? Is it because the decision, a pending decision from government may trigger that they go forward?
Well, yeah, the time frame or the extension of time is for a decision. There's nothing stopping, I guess, Calcutta reactivating it and doing it earlier. I guess initiating a hearing earlier and us making a decision earlier. So. It's just that would be the maximum time frame in which we would have to make a decision.
Right. Any appetite to change and meet in the middle of 18 months?
I mean, I support 2 years.
I'm
2 years. Yep.
2 years. I mean, does it start in October?
Yes. Yeah. 2 years.
So it would be 2 years, 3 months from now we made that decision.
So there's just the Ellie will be
Just noting that this is actually an application to the minister. This is not us making a decision. It's us putting a recommendation or a request to the minister. The minister obviously has the final decision of whether they approve it and for what time frame. This is just our level. And just also to note, we have our housing and business assessment. It does lump Wahara and Matamata together. That's how our assessment is done. We do know that there is industrial development happening, or the land that council used to own is under development at the moment. And so I guess with this application we just also need to be mindful of, trying to meet our demand that we need to under our housing and business assessment. So once that land that council has used to own is developed, it's likely that we're probably in a bit of a shortfall of industrial land. At the moment, this application is on hold. But hopefully, and you know, we do hear whispers that the government is probably coming out imminently around some changes to the NPSUD, which is urban development, and the NPS highly productive land, and how those two work together.
I'd like to move, we'll make it 2 years.
Just hang on a minute, because we've still got discussion.
I was just wondering whether you think, as we're only making a recommendation of 1 year or 2 year to the minister, I guess in your opinion, would us making a recommendation of 1 year or 2 year make any difference to him as to whether he would approve it or not approve it? Like, would he go, no, you don't need 2 years, that's crazy, as opposed to, oh, 1 year seems reasonable? Like, do you think?
So we haven't been through this process before, and neither have our legal team. And obviously we have a new minister, so and it's at their discretion. So I really can't answer that question. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You know, from a staff perspective, we've obviously put a recommendation forward. If you choose 2 years, you know, we're happy to put that forward to the minister.
At the end of the day, he has a choice to reduce that to 1 year, should he want to, right? Yeah. So why not do the 2 years scenario and let him make a decision? Sorry, beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll make a decision.
Absolutely, the decision is for council.
And I mean, this government, if you look at the submissions that have been placed to them from councils, they are generally more supportive of the local decision-making process rather than coming in and overruling what council are seeking, if that makes sense.
So salient to that, and I think it might be wise for us to propose 2 years, and then when we get the minister's response, you know, if they're going to be supportive of our suggestion, it kind of makes sense to go to 2 years.
I'm just trying to understand the impacts of our planning in our district if we end up with a shortfall of industrial land in this 2 year time frame, because this application has been on hold. Like, as regional council has said, there's been plenty of time to put this case, and we all know that this application is at risk because it doesn't seem to be the support of it because of the high productive soils and our HBA. It's because of those short time frames in our high productive land. And I just want to be sure that if it is 2 years, that we aren't left scrambling for, like, and I feel for Calcutta, because they're caught in this unfortunate space. But if we run short of industrial land in the meantime, how, like, it'll mean that theirs will presumably go ahead. And I guess the 2 year thing, they can bring it forward. If the government changed their policy sooner, then press go.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the trigger. I would assume.
Just to add to that, I think probably what the issue is the scale of Calcutta. Yes. So our housing and business assessment says that in the long term, so in the next 30 years, we need about 40 hectares of industrial land across the district. So Calcutta is essentially taking that in one swoop and in one place. So I guess our concern and the reasoning behind our recommendation for 1 year is that this having this plan change in hiatus, is it going to put other people off applying for plan changes for industrial land that may be, I guess, more bite-sized and more manageable in terms of the amount of area that they're proposing? So,
that is the risk. And what about plan change 49? Does that get affected at all?
It does. And I guess we have had interest in industrial zoning, further industrial zoning in Wahara, but at the moment we just can't really support it because we don't.
Yeah, that's hooked in the HBL as well.
Yeah, we don't have our HBA says we don't have the need for it.
If you get all in one place, does mean that the infrastructure might be easier to get, particularly where it's like it.
Yeah, it's two different markets. This is the frustration we have with 2 areas of industrial land, is it is 2 different markets. Yeah. I guess it's what is the risk? And of course, WRC, well, we'd expect the Mustos to be opposed. But like their reasoning was that it didn't meet the RMA or whatever. There was some comment they made. Can you elaborate what they mean by that?
So I think what they're talking about is the interests of the community in achieving an adequate assessment. So the RMA allows you to double time frame these elements of or special circumstances, and special circumstances often or can mean complexity. So in an instance of a resource consent, if you've got a difficult resource consent, you've only got 20 working days to process it, you might double it because you need more time to undertake an adequate assessment of it. And so what WRC are saying is that you can make an adequate assessment of it now. You don't need to double the timeframes any further. You've got all the information you need. Make your decision. And I guess at this stage, the decision might not necessarily be in Calcutta's favour, which is why they've asked for it.
Yeah. And that's a reasonable assumption. Yeah. James.
Yeah, so just trying to get my head around on the point that you raised, Your Worship. So if this is in a hiatus for 2 years, other potential developers might be put off pursuing the development because of their perception of the market.
Well, they see a hole.
Is that right? There's no like regulatory reason why they can't proceed.
No, there's no regulatory reason.
It's their perception that this is going to be, but if they get in first, if they get their development through.
Well, I guess the question is, can they get in first? Because Calcutta's already ahead.
Yeah.
They've been through the notification process. They've got their submissions. All they have to do is have a hearing, whereas any plan change that comes in now has to start from the beginning. So
as soon as the hearing goes in, in a scenario where the hearing was held in favour of Calcutta, then the likelihood that any developers after that.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you were a rational developer, you wouldn't start a process until you understood the outcome of this one.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. And then I guess my other question, just with respect to option 2 and option 3, is that they all look at the assessment all looks the same, except that option 3 specifies the criteria set out in clause 10A3 as schedule 1, whereas option 2 doesn't. Is there a difference in the description of those options, or no?
No, not really.
Oh, no, I was just wondering if there was an extra level of whatever that's required for option 3.
No, they're essentially the same, I guess.
Yeah. No worries, that's fine. I couldn't see a material difference, just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah. And this is where you can see there's 2 ways of looking at this. And it's sort of quite like the 18 months because it gives $1 each way into timing. Because depending on how quickly this land is developed in Matamata, we could be, there will be a gap until PC 57's heard, and presumably with the change in rules it will trigger. But yeah, as I said, I'm in your hands, guys. So, Bruce.
It's very complicated. There are so many connotations. But if we said you only got 12 months, you get in and do it, all right, and then and it gets approved, all right, through the plan change. What will be the obligation on the applicant to develop that land?
There is none.
There is none.
Right. So.
But we would assume there'd be a design to.
Right, but what I'm getting at is here they get it. They would have that 40 hectares or whatever, right? No, they could sit on and do nothing with it then, right? So where does that put you? You've got your
Yeah. I think the intent would be to.
Yes, I know, but
go to the trouble of a resource consent for that cost you will develop. I think this isn't an insignificant cost.
Really, I just don't.
Yeah.
This RMA and the plan changes, and whatever, you just take forever and ever anyway. I still sit with 2 years. That's what they've asked.
So just to clarify around plan changes, private plan changes are paid for by the applicant. So they are going to develop. When council zones land through our own plan change, it is slower because we have to consult with the community at large, but also there is no obligation on the land use zone to be developed. You know, that's in the landowner's hands. So I think it's a pretty safe assumption that when a person puts in a private plan change application, their intent is to develop because they've invested a significant amount of money. Because we have people want councils to do plan changes and do it for them because it saves them money. So yeah, Dane.
I was just thinking so from their perspective, if they're going for 2 years, I guess they could potentially be hedging their bets that maybe this government is going to change the rules sometime in that 2 year time frame to make it easier for them.
That's what it's about.
You know, if it's 12 months, then you know, they might have to get cracking on it because they're not an opportunity, I guess. So I guess we could a little bit be held hostage while they just sit on their hands to decide whether it's worth doing or not to some extent.
If the government make a change in policy. But there's nothing to stop another developer wanting to develop a small.
We don't know that. That's not the issue.
This is not going to stop that from happening. This is not that you can't develop.
Well, they will go through a private plan change, and so this one's the first one on the queue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just on that, so absolutely agree with Councillor Dewhurst that there is no onus on the applicant to develop it. However, given that I agree with Mayor Wilcox that there has been a lot of money spent already in regards to this, and I do understand, while I can give you no guarantees, I do understand that the actual landowner wants to do some development of their own within this property as well. So there is some drivers from their own personal, for their own business, as well as meeting the market. And obviously to make things viable, you need to get some other sections, not just your own sections, to make it work. In regards to the comment around what are the drivers here for the extension, absolutely. In the applicant's letter, they've said, you know, this was pounced upon them. We all feel empathy for the applicant, which was, you know, council was supportive, you know, of the plan change and going ahead and developing more industrial land within Matamata. However, with the introduction of the NPS HPL, that only allowed us to zone 10 years of development. So that's really the crux of why this plan change hasn't progressed, and the applicant has been sort of very clear about that in their application. And yeah, so I guess the 2 years does give longer time for the government to see changes. However, we are seeing changes coming out really fast at the moment. So yeah, we're not in control of those timeframes, and we don't have any idea, even if it does come out, what it's going to look like. Are we going to be allowed to zone for 30 years? Is it going to be 20 years? We just don't have that detail.
Is there any interest in meeting halfway at 18 months?
Sure, it's why don't we get it?
Okay, well, if someone wants to put the motion. No, just you are going to move the recommendation. You are going to recommendation that the council makes the application to the Minister for the Environment for a 2 year extension to plan change, private plan change 57 process in accordance. Yes.
I'll second that.
Second, Sarah Jane. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Good robust discussion. What I needed to hear. Robust discussion. Thank you. Right, we will now move on to item 7.13, which is disc golf at Mornington Recreation Ground. And I think Mark will be away, isn't he? Yep, so we've got Aisha here today to join us. Oh, and Hamish online, who must be, oh, Hamish is our disc golf champion. That is a very good word. Thank you, Gary.
Kia ora, Mayor and Councillors. The report is read. As you correctly said, we've got Hamish, who's the champion of the Waikato Disc Golf Association. Essentially, we're here to get council's approval in principle for the Waikato Disc Golf Association to set up a disc golf course at the Morrinsville Rec Ground. Yeah.
I'll move that.
Yeah, and just as a point there, I mean, Morrinsville councillors and me were at the user group, if you like, or slash user group at the Rec Ground, 12th of June, wasn't it? So, and really good presentation by all the groups, and no brainer really. It's really great to see new users coming in and utilising space that doesn't interfere with anybody else and just gets them underway.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, James. The just a comment that I'd make is that they had been put in a spot out by the railway line, and of course the what we learned at the users group meeting was that the trees added another element, because the railway line's not an ideal place for frisbee, because the disc frisbees to fly. If you're
Actually mentioned this at the Tiara Business Association meeting the other night, and they could see it as a great asset bringing into not only Morrinsville but Matamata and Tiara, because people do travel for this, and as it's the only one in the Waikato.
I'll just
Tiara and Matamata.
Yeah, so the only disc golf course in Waikato District, and Hamish can correct me, is just in Taupo. So if someone does want to go all the way down, then
I think there's a few others around if you look at that.
Yeah, but like
It's one of the kind ones.
So this is just a principle so that they can set up. I guess there is going to be some negotiation with some of the users that perhaps use that space, and understanding what impact it might have or might not have. We all have perceptions of how we might be affected until we see it, and how they can work around it.
Although on that point, Mary Jane, again referring to that meeting, none of the other user groups that were there had any issues around how that would be set up.
It's not until it's put in that people will see.
Appreciate it. I can't see any issues.
I think the only one was probably around the AMP Society, and where they have their cows that are in around those rows. So this is great. I'm all for this, I guess.
We can work through it.
At the end of the day, yes, just working through maybe some of those tees needing to be removable for those few days a year. And I mean, I guess, that's on the disc golf guys to take that into account, because they may end up being ripped out if they're not removable if someone calls them.
Absolutely.
But this will be great. I think,
Yep, so that will be covered in the memorandum of understanding that we'll work with the Waikato Disc Golf Association. To go back to that event that we were talking about, the Waikato Disc Golf Association did reassure us that provided they get sufficient notice, they will be able to remove the equipment that can be removed, just mainly the baskets. So again, that's collaborating with other community groups, which again we'll put in our memorandum of understanding.
And the key to this is you need to go ahead to apply for funding.
Yes.
This is this point, and we'll leave it to the operational side of it to follow that process. So James was
Thomas. Hamish, what's it approval today?
No, he doesn't have speaking rights.
I don't have speaking rights. Do you have any indication if they get approval today, what the timeline could be?
I do not know.
No, this is just
just to get in principle so that they can go and apply for funding. So that they can put the equipment in.
We'll have a health and safety issue with, just flying through and people go through.
So you watch good cry.
Okay. Rightio, we will now just carry on with the recommendation. And so James Thomas has moved. Who is my seconder? Thank you, Dane. All those in favour of the report being received, council approves the Waikato Disc Golf Association's proposal on principle to set up a disc golf course at the Morrinsville Rec Ground. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's very timely to have that public meeting to talk about it. Right, we will now move on to item 8.1. Which is our emergency management quarterly report from January to April. And for Ali and Julian Snowball joining us this morning. Good morning and welcome. And we're just 5 minutes ahead. That's cool. Thanks for being here early, Julian.
Good morning. Yes, it is still morning, councillors. Sorry, I haven't been presenting, but I have been chatting to you just before. So Julian and I are here to talk about the Emergency Management Quarterly Report. We're both in the hot seat because this report was prepared by Mark Bang and Dennis Bellamy. So bear with us as we go through this. So I'll sort of be talking about the MPDC work plan, and Julian will be sort of covering what we are doing at Region. So in regards to the work plan, you may or may not be aware that we had an emergency management officer, Lauren, who has been with us for about 18 months. Unfortunately, she has had this amazing opportunity overseas and has just left us. And we're currently recruiting for a new EMO officer at this time. So, yeah, she's off in China. Japan, China. Yeah, working for Japan in China. So she had an amazing opportunity that she couldn't turn down.
Yeah, and she was here for our drill. She stayed until that drill in the middle of June.
She did. She finished off that week, which was very much appreciative from our perspective. So she's obviously has had a work plan over the last year, and the things that, as you can see in the report, that she's been working on is communications and ICTs. So, you know, continuing to look at the civil defence communication systems or platforms such as Whisper, and also looking at radio networks for the district in case we can't, we need alternative means of communicating. She's also been driving our iwi and Māori partnerships and engaging at a local level, and also pushing that through the local welfare committee. In regards to readiness and response, so we're looking at continual improvement and development of our systems through that, and looking at maintaining sufficient training and competent staff. So we're continually to make sure that people are trained. Everybody who works for council goes through that foundation course. It is one of the 4 things that we promote, as it is one of our responsibilities that we need to do. Also looking at response plan. I know Lauren was working quite heavily on that before she left. It was one of her aspirations to get into, and looking at responding to lessons learned from the reports that have been done at a group level and nationally, and also to maintain and deliver our local welfare plan. In regards to recovery, which is as the council recovery manager, one of the things that I've been working on is looking at just wrapping up the Auckland anniversary floods, and also Auckland anniversary event and Cyclone Gabrielle. So through that, we've been doing a stock take of our council-owned facilities and critical assets and how power resilient they are. Do they have capacity for generators, and do they have a capacity on site? So we've done a stock take of that. We have also done some physical flood control works where we had some flooding. And as you're well aware, we're doing flood modelling currently for Matamata-Piako and Morrinsville to understand where it will flood and rapid rainfall events. We've also, through that time, approved the Mayoral Disaster Relief Fund policy so that we've got guidance should we be in that situation again. The next thing is we're aware of properties that did flood in our district, and we need to be transparent on limbs of information council holds about that event. So we're currently going through a communication project to talk to those landowners, to inform them and give them the opportunity to have some feedback about what happened on their on their property, And that project is likely to come about end of this month, beginning of the next month. We will be engaging with those parties. And we also looked at generating a system framework for current and future events. So looking at having our corporate system as authority when we're in the middle of an event, how can we use our technology to the best of our ability to capture the information? So I prepared a completion report, and that has been submitted to our executive team. And looking forward, we also had an exercise Arua, which me Adrian just talked about. It was an exercise based around the earthquake on the Kirapehi Fault and was conducted on the 13th of June. And it was to test our operational response plan. It was really well received. We had over 50 staff at the Silver Fern Event Centre, because we were originally coming here, but as part of the scenario, this building was compromised, so we had to make a change and go to the Silver Fern. We're very lucky to have Julian as our controller for the day, and Deb Burge took on the role of response manager, and we had all of our function leads there as well. We haven't heard, we were getting assessed as part of that exercise. We haven't to date heard how we went, but I think there was some really good feedback, and people really did, those who have been trained appreciated being involved in that activity, and it actually grew their learning quite substantially by doing an exercise. I think that's it. Obviously, our emergency management officer is done through a service level agreement with Waikato Regional Council, and with Lauren's absence, we're just looking to re-sign that service level agreement when the new person is employed. Any questions in regards to a local level? Otherwise, I'll hand over to Julian.
So you coped okay when the lights got switched off during the drill?
Yes. Yeah, yep. You know, all of those things do happen in real life. You're sitting there with your computer, and then they had an inject that all the power's out, and you're thinking, how long is this power out for? But no, it's really good to do those things, because actually in an event that is likely to happen, and we need to make sure that we have alternative ways of communicating, and that it's not a shock when that happens, that we've actually been through that in the exercise.
And I guess it means that you need some stuff on paper.
Yes, yeah.
Because that's the thing, is when everything's stored in the cloud. Yeah, because there's some contact details that you'll need if it's can't have everything, but there has to be some basic data, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and I know that Debbie, from a response perspective, has hard copies of contacts, their phone numbers, the addresses, and everything like that. In case the communications goes down, at least she's got some information, so she prints those out and updates those. Yeah.
And just to inform council, it was a
she has printed them out. She's got a little folder.
That's a proper exercise. I was actually driving to Hamilton or to the airport to catch a plane, and Julian rang, and of course I was going through Scotson's Valley, and I didn't have his contacts on my phone, so that was a good learning that I need to have a certain person contact, because I didn't know the number. Luckily, I called it back once I got into range, because I just had this feeling I better ring back, because I don't always ring back people if I don't know the number. But in this case, I said, I had this deep gut feeling I needed to call back, and so now Julian's number is on my contacts. So we did follow a proper process where I had to sign a declaration and take a photo of it and send it through, so that it was all officially done. And to test that procedure, we have to do it. So it was right from the start. There was a bit of a hurdle to climb. So that was good. Thanks, Ellie. I don't think there's any other questions. Cheers, Julian. Over to you. Good luck.
Thank you. So I suppose, just building on that, that's the reality, is when something happens, it never goes to plan. And there's quite a bit of debate, funnily enough, different groups across the country regarding whether it should be different bits of legal advice, whether or not it should be a hard signature. Auckland, for example, I think I've taken a legal advice that it doesn't need to be. It can be an auto signature or an e-signature, but there's other advice out there. So the inconsistency feeds into the national review. It feeds that there is no single source of doing things, and there's 16 civil defence groups, all with different, all independent, if you want, within the Act. We'll all interpret things slightly differently. My view is quite a pragmatic one. It's got to be a hard signature, but it doesn't need to be on a particular form. And if you tell me that you've signed a book and we've assigned your diary and said that there is I've written down that the reason for the declaration is life safety, and this is the event that's triggered it. For me, that is sufficient, and we can move forward, because we're in a modern world. The Act has got to change to accommodate electronic signatures and accommodate remote working, and not going sticking to it, there must be a hard signature on a particular form. So hopefully the Act will address some of that. Now, talking about the Act, at a national level, some time ago, the previous government put through or considering some new legislation, because the current Act is 2002, and they were considering some new legislation, a new bill that got to select committee, and then as a result of the findings of multiple reviews, so that's the Auckland anniversary review by Mike Bush in Auckland, the Mike Bush review of the Hawke's Bay response, and the Sageri Mataparai review of the national response to Cyclone Gabriel and the Auckland anniversary. This government has removed that bill from that new bill from Parliament, so it no longer exists in that form, and that's on the basis that the issues identified and the challenges identified in the system were not going to be addressed by the proposal put forward in the bill. The intent of the national government, the current coalition government, is to have new legislation back in Parliament by the end of this term of Parliament. And at the moment, coalition government have received the Sageri Mataparai National Review with a number of observations and recommendations in it, and the government are now considering how to respond to the Sageri Mataparai review. It's really interesting, that review, this is my take, we've done our own assessment of all of those reviews, and we also did our own independent review of how we as a region responded to Gabriel. And it's pleasing to see that our review and things that we highlighted for us as a region are no different to what was found in the other reviews. The Sageri Mataparai review actually references the Waikato as a region about, I think it's either 3 or 4 times, but in a positive context. But I wouldn't want that to mislead anybody, because the review is a highly critical review, and I would say, as I've outlined, we did our own review and we would have been found wanting for exactly the same reasons as Hawke's Bay were found wanting on the day, and that's around trained personnel, that's around the ability to communicate, that's around operational systems, and particularly around community engagement. Our strength, funnily enough, is, or was and is, in our complexity, because we're such a big group. We have to rely on, so we go from Thames at the top over to Port Waikato and down to Taupo and across to Mokau. So we've got 10 local authorities, 11 if you include the regional council. And that complexity means there's no way we could run an emergency effectively and efficiently from the centre. So we rely on local delivery. And this is where you as a council are expected to have staff trained and have your own controller, and you have your own incident management team to run the local event. So that's the complexity, causes me to be a bit grey, but in terms of dealing with 11 councils and 11 bodies, whereas actually from a community perspective, it's a brilliant outcome. And that's what's come out of the Sageri review. So yeah, the recommendation in the Sageri report is very much around not going to one central agency. There was a call for that from the Mike Bush review. So if you look at cause and effect, they both talk about the same cause and effect in terms of the Mike Bush review and the Sageri Mataparai review, that we were overwhelmed and we were underprepared. And the things that I've just talked about in terms of community communications, trained personnel, were all the same issues. The recommendations were very different. The Mike Bush review was taking us down a single agency, whereas the Sageri or a more centralised agency, the Sageri Mataparai review, is very much around actually local emergency management is best delivered at a local level. So at the moment, the response to that review is with the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, not with NEMA. NEMA are a participant on the journey, the National Emergency Management Agency, they're a participant on the journey as much as everybody else. But we there's a group, an emergency management SIG, which is 16 of the group managers that we sit on, that we have managed to proactively lean in and get a seat at the table around how the government's going to respond, because currently the representation on the DPMC working group, if you want, around what the solutions look like, it's very central government focused. So we've managed to get ourselves a seat as technical advisors to say, let's have a look at whether the central government recommendations are going to be fit for purpose for a local solution. It's happening very quick. I heard previous reports around the speed of some of the changes at a national level, and there's no difference here. The Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet are intending to give some recommendations to Cabinet by September, October this year, and then there's a three-phased approach to the response. One will be what can be changed immediately without any additional resources or any change in legislation. Then a second phase around what can be changed and adopted with some extra resource. And then finally, what can be changed with or requires legislative change. But it's happening very, very quickly. We cannot speak for local government at the moment. We're very clear as group managers. We're very clear. We're speaking from an emergency management technical perspective, and we're stressing the importance of engaging with local government, iwi and others around the proposals and making sure that local communities are at the heart of that consultation. And we've been given the assurance that that will happen, but it's going to happen at pace.
Yeah. I guess the important thing is to speak to the people that have been adversely affected is the critical point. It's all right for those of us that haven't been affected. It's nothing like on the ground what went wrong, and we all go back to what happened in Hawke's Bay when they had the generators to fire up, but they needed diesel and there was no FPOS machine to buy the diesel. So, you know, it's where cash legal tender is still a thing. So really fascinating space, and yeah, really an interesting, I think very interesting space to work in, because it's obvious there's a need to do better. And I do like the local. I think the local knowledge, the local at ground, it happens locally. It makes sense, and centralising everything. And glad to hear that you've got a space, or that NEMA have got a space on that as technical advisors, because it's all great to know that we all think we know everything, but yeah, ideologically. So yeah, it's great. So is there any questions or we look forward to the report, I guess, from the exercise to see what learnings there are, because there will be always learnings. And yeah, and I'm just really proud of the team, our staff, at their efforts in the space. And obviously with staff changes, Debbie has moved into the with Kelly moving up. There's been changes in positions with civil defence, with our emergency management. So, but the strength is that we've got staff engaged in it, and not forgetting they've got their other job that they have to do as well. Thank goodness we didn't have any more emergencies this year. That, you know, after last summer, earthquakes and continual weather events. Yeah, but we learnt a lot from that too. I think that was the other thing, is that period over that summer did. There was a lot of learnings then, so nothing like being thrown in to do. Cool.
Councillor Smith, you don't have anything to add from the joint committee?
Not from the meeting last week, no.
Right.
We were able to sort of thank Dennis again at the meeting and
good
as well. So
excellent. Yeah, thanks for that, Russell. I guess you find it quite interesting, the conversation.
yeah, a lot of it's still going over my head even after 3 years now. Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, I find it, because it's such an important part of our what we do as a council. It's we are the connection, and it goes back to what Basil Morrison always says: if we will be found wanting. That is the reality of it. And of course, I actually commend Lauren on what she's done. Sorry to drag this out, but I think it is important to note that Lauren was going to groups speaking, and I know one of her last jobs was to go to the Matamata-Piako and speak to the people, because the thing is it's what people can do for themselves. That is the greatest message that we really have, so that people have resilience themselves, because there was only one Lauren. That was the reality of it. When she spoke at the library at a business association, the chamber after 5, there was only one Lauren. Her replacement will only be one person. That person cannot do everything, And you always watch on TV when incidents happen, as people, where's civil defence? We see nobody. The reality is they're working in the background trying to get things done, but it's what you can do for yourself. And I think that's the critical thing for us to, again, encourage our communities to understand what they can do for themselves and for their local neighbourhood and how they can work together to get through. Because that will be our strength, is if people can do a bit for themselves.
Totally agree, and it's for me, it's about not trying to. Interesting to come from words to come from somebody who's got a role called a controller. It's not to try and control the community. It's not to try and control the groups. It's to try and put them in the right direction so they're at least running the same direction as everybody. They might not get there at the same time, and they might run in a funny walk, but they go into the same direction. Don't try and control everything because you cannot.
Yeah, try and have some kind of coordinated approach that you haven't missed. I guess the thing is, where are the holes? Where are the gaps? So yeah, right. With that, if there's someone like to move that the information be received, thank you, Gary, and seconded Russell. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Thanks, Julie. Love to see you. Seen you a bit this morning, Ellie. Well, good. Right, can I have someone now move us into public excluded, please?
Yep.
Moved Caleb, seconded Kevin. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against. Back onto live stream. Okay, just want to thank everyone for their input. I think the LTP was certainly a long and hard piece of work, a challenging piece of work for us to work through. We have got there. I think we've hit things up front, and hopefully the coming years will not be as challenging as they are at the moment. Would be my wish and hope for the future for our ratepayers and for council in general. So with that, I will now close